The Clones of Langston by Carol Fullerton Samsell. Chapter 1. Discovery. 20-year-old Cameron stood by Brian's bed. "What is it?" she said. "I don't know," said Brian. "When I picked up my clothes it was underneath." A translucent tongue flickered at them. "It climbed up the wall yesterday." He pointed to the edge of the ceiling. "Way up there." She ran a hand through her blonde hair and scrunched her nose. "But it doesn't have legs." Brian shrugged. "You should report it," said Cameron. "I want to keep it. It's the only animal I've seen, except for Rodentia. A strip of patterned scales wound across the shadowy floor. "I bet somebody cloned it. They're probably looking all over for it." "Then they'll have to keep looking." "You should report it, Brian. Besides, how are you going to feed it? You don't even know what it is." He nodded. "It's been weeks, and it hasn't eaten anything. It wouldn't even try reconstruction." "Food isn't allowed out of the commissary, you know that." "Then you shouldn't keep sneaking those snacks into your desk drawer." Her mouth opened, but she decided not to answer. "Maybe the authorities will know what to do with it." Brian frowned. "Kill it, that's what they'll do." They stood quietly for a time, watching the creature's thin body glide along a wall. "Does it bite?" said Cameron. "I don't know. I hate to admit it, but I'm afraid to pick it up. I touched it, though." Her eyebrows arched. "Just for a moment. It was firm, smooth, kind of oily." Cameron stooped in front of the little animal. "It is pretty. Who'd have thought something like this could have lived?" She reached a hand toward it, and the creature whipped wildly. Cameron stepped back, clutching her hand to her chest. She stood frozen, watching the animal. Its movement slowed. "I should just let it bite me and see what happens," she said. "Now you're being—" The creature coiled in a corner, and Cameron stooped in front of it. The little beast raised its scaly head and spread wide its mouth. It hissed. "I don't know why I'm so afraid. I don't see any teeth." "Just leave it be," said Brian. "If you wind up at the clinic, how will we explain it?" She backed out of her squat. "I'll see what I can find out about, well, whatever it is." He took her hand and gave it a squeeze, distracting her from his find. "Just be discreet." She smiled at him coyly. "Haven't I been discreet so far?" Chapter 2. The Expert. In the lab, Cameron edged up to 42-year-old Dobie and leaned against the counter. "What are you doing?" "Same thing as the past 20 years. "Reading DNA sequences?" "Mm-hmm." "Anything interesting?" "Adjusting one of the technical lines. I'm supposed to make them more tractable and yet free-thinking, so that they can figure out how to fix things." "I wish I could see the finished product." "Our job is to write the sequence, not produce it." "But wouldn't you like to talk with them?" said Cameron. "I mean, I've talked to some of the messengers and occasionally to the food handlers." "Why doesn't that surprise me?" She smirked. "What I'm saying is, how do we know we're doing a good job? As long as there are no complaints, I assume everything's fine." "Have you ever talked to any of them about how they feel or what they think, or if they think? Have you had an actual conversation with, say, a technical model or a medical, anyone other than a creative?" He shook his head. "I'm afraid I'd be disappointed." She smiled mischievously. "I hear you're quite proud of your work. Some say you keep a personalized model locked in your cubicle." "And hopefully she'll never get out. She might report me to the authorities." Cameron cocked her head. "I'm sure she'd realize all of your endearing qualities and wouldn't have the heart." "You don't have to be nice to me just because of Brian." She shrugged. "Brian thinks very highly of you. He admires your ingenuity." "You mean he fears my ingenuity." She didn't answer. "But tell me, Cameron, what do you think of me?" Her lips pursed as she considered his question. "You pretty much keep to yourself, spend a lot of time on the computer, but you must know more about ancient animals than anyone else in the sphere." "You've pulled my research history, my files?" "Nothing like that. Sometimes I see the screen from across the room. All kinds of wonderful beasts. Sometimes I want to come over for a look, but I know you don't like me much." "I don't dislike you. When I'm around Brian you're polite enough, but most of the time you don't even acknowledge me." "So did you come over here just to make me feel guilty?" "Maybe I just wanted to say hi." He blushed. "Okay, hi. Plus, something's been prying on my mind. I wanted to ask you—" His blush deepened. His chest froze mid-breath. "Hypothetically," he gave a quick nod, "if someone happened to see something unusual—" He began to let out a tiny bit of air, but didn't quite know exactly what they'd seen. The blush faded, and he turned back to his work. "I bet you could tell them what it was." So, he sighed, what does this sequence of yours look like, the one that you saw? Well, actually, it's a whole series of sequences, put together so that it's living and breathing. His jaw dropped. You've seen it, haven't you? She took a step back, her face blanching. Seen what? Whatever it is that Brian's been hiding. What's Brian got to do with this? I know he has something in his cubicle. We usually hang out there, but lately he won't let me in. Always wants to meet in the commissary or the lab. Something's in there. Like what? Well, I don't know because I haven't seen it, but you have, haven't you? Sometimes, Dobie, you get the strangest ideas. She turned to leave, and he put a hand on her arm. Hypothetically, he soothed, what might this thing you saw look like? I only saw it in passing. It's all right, Cameron. Brian's my friend. I don't want to get him, or you, in trouble. The rims of her eyes began to redden. That gross, huh? You know, with enough persistence and research, you could probably find the answer yourself. There might not be time for that. It hasn't eaten for weeks. It's bound to die. Let me understand this. Brian cloned what I presume is an animal, and he doesn't know what it eats? He didn't clone it. He found it. Look, I wasn't supposed to say anything. If you're going to turn anyone in, could you just report me and leave Brian out of it? And what happens when they question you? I can see you're slick at hiding your feelings. Just promise me. I'll tell you what. Come by my cubicle tonight and we'll figure it out. We might need a computer, though. Maybe, but then things will be quieter around here and there'll be fewer questions. He raised an eyebrow toward a coworker across the room. Harmon's probably wondering why you're talking to me right now. She met Harmon's inquiring gaze and then lowered her eyes. Come on, said Dobie. I'll tell my sexy clone to be on her best behavior. She thought for a moment and then nodded. It's a date then. Let me finish with these and I'll see you later. And bring some of those snacks you've been stashing. Chapter 3. Contraband. She stood at the door and pressed the button again. Dobie answered, sliding the door side manually, just wide enough to squeeze through. Hi, he said, joining her in the corridor. I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind. No, but I think you're right. We're going to need a computer. I had a little trouble finding you back here, even with your directions. Why aren't you in one of the dorms like everyone else? I have a bit of insomnia. This way, if I can't sleep, I'm closer to the lab and something to do. She nodded to a door as they passed. Who's in that one? Storage, I think. And that one? More storage? Aren't you lonely back here? Nah, Sheila keeps me company. Sheila? You know, my personalized clone. Well, in that case, it is best you keep to yourself. The corporation tends to frown on unauthorized clones, you know. They entered the lab. Their hands brushed as they reached for a switch on the wall. The overhead lights flickered. What if someone comes in, she asked. Then they'll see me working at night, as usual. But they'll also see me working at night, highly unusual. Yes, well, we have all noticed your lack of enthusiasm. Her mouth opened a bit. And it's curious. You seem very loyal to the corporation, yet the corporation values productivity above all else. Sometimes I just want to enjoy myself, said Cameron. You know, relax and have some fun. Here? It's just hard to get enthused about work when I'm denied the results. Knowledge would only interfere with productivity. I always fulfill my assignments. My productivity rating is actually very high. You needn't defend yourself. I highly admire your lack of focus. Could we just get to work? Not so fast, he said. I think some snacks would be in order. Why does everyone think I'm sneaking food? Nobody opens and closes their drawer that much, or chews thin air. I'll make you a deal. Let's get to work, assume I've nothing in my desk, and I won't say anything about Sheila. Fair enough. And how do you rate a computer at your desk? Dobie shrugged. He took a seat and Cameron pulled up a chair. So, he sighed, what does this creature of yours look like? It's hard to describe. He pushed a datapad toward her. Draw. She drew a circle attached to a squiggly line. Oh, he said, I can tell you what that is. What? Sperm. He looked at the drawing a second time. Yes, definitely sperm. It's not. Round head, moving tail. The tail's really long, she said, holding her hands apart, like this. What does the head look like? Does it have a big snout, little ears? Like a circle, maybe an oval. I didn't see any ears. And where are its legs? It doesn't have legs either. Are you sure you're not describing Brian's Wiggly? It can be quite a shocker the first time you see one. Cameron reddened. She bumped a stack of yellowed papers filled with charts and formulas, and it slid off the desktop. The items fell into a loose pile on the floor, and something clapped on top. "What's this?" "Leave it," said Dobie. "I'll get it later." "Is it a box?" She reached down and lifted it gently with both hands. "No," she mused. "Papers." A few sheets slipped from the collection. Cameron pressed the remaining sheets together to keep them in place, and then found they were attached. "It's called a book." "Clever the way the paper's all stuck in like that." He reached toward it, and she drew it away. "Can I take a look?" "You probably shouldn't. It's considered contraband." "Yes?" "It's very old. Maybe before the time of computers. Who knows?" "Before the corporation?" "Could be." She looked down at the loose pages lying about her. One had a fanciful picture of an animal with great horns. Dobie helped her gather the strays, and then watched her face as she leafed through the book. Her mouth lipped the captions beneath each illustration. He watched the lips move. "Where did you get it?" she asked. "Found it." "Found it where?" He pointed to an animal with brown spots and a long neck. "I like that one." "You think someone made all these animals up? I can hardly believe—" "They're real, or at least they used to be." She ran a finger around the giraffe. "What are these things behind it?" "Trees." "They're plants?" He nodded. "I saw a plant once, a real one, about so big." She held up her thumb and index finger. "So we could make all of these?" "In theory. Some of the DNA isn't in the library, though. I've checked." "How long have you had this?" "I don't know. I thought I'd lost it. Guess I need to organize my stacks every now and then." "Do you think our animal would be in here?" "You can look if you want. I'll try the computer." "This one looks like Rodentia caca." He leaned over for a closer look. "Lemur," he read. His breath floated a strand of her hair. The warmth about her cheeks seared his. Reluctantly he drew away. "So are you going to tell the authorities about the contraband?" She flipped to another page. "Mm-hmm. After I've looked at the pictures." When she noticed his silence, she looked up. "Just kidding. I won't mention it to anyone." "I just wondered. I heard that you reported someone once for keeping a plant." "Well, yes, but I was only 8 years old. She was my best friend." "You turned in your best friend?" "I was 8. I was just following the rules." "The rules haven't changed." "It's just a bunch of paper. I'm sure it's valuable, but I don't think there's any danger to it." "But who knows what eons-old DNA-altering bacteria might be lying in wait there on those very pages." She rubbed her fingers together. "Don't worry," he said. "I've had it for years, and I'm still alive." "Besides," she said, "if I report your book, you could report Brian's creature." "I would never report a friend." "I was 8. Nothing happened. The authorities came and gave her a scare, that's all. They tore up her plant and stomped on it, and then hugged her when she cried. She never broke the rules again." "Or confided it to you." "You think she had other secrets?" "You'd never know." "So if she had the plant, and you have this book, and Brian has this little creature, does that mean I'm the only one not breaking the rules?" "Depends. Are we still overlooking the snacks in your desk drawer?" "The alleged snacks." "And the fact that you're helping Brian keep an unauthorized animal, and that you're helping me conceal a contraband book?" He gently took the book from her hands and laid it on the other side of his desk. "Your animal's not in there." "How do you know?" "Everything in there has legs."